All right, today we're going to talk about what to do if you were a gifted child, or you currently are a gifted kid, or you're a recovering gifted kid like me. What to do if growing up you were just a little bit special, and not special in the retarded way. I mean, well, there are definitely points in time where I think that was true for me. Definitely. But, anyways, we move on and we grow up and we get better, or at least we think we do. And that's sort of the gifted child's conundrum in many ways. And there's a couple videos out there about it that have had their own descriptions and ideas and kind of videos and stuff like that. But today I thought I'd talk a little bit more about how I view these things, being as though this was my condition growing up. And so to preface, I guess we'll just actually go into the definition of a gifted child, which is essentially what makes a gifted kid versus one that's not really is more or less about the accumulation of this knowledge which just appeared that you were able to glide through life for a while up until the point where that was no longer the case. And then you slowly feel like you're left behind because you can no longer rely upon the natural intuitiveness and natural reasoning and awareness that you used to be able to use to just pass tests, to ideate with others, to just kind of be present for whatever you need to do. At a certain point, when you're a gifted kid, you reach a wall to where you can't rely upon just the general sense making of the world to pass tests and find the right answers. You hit a wall, and therefore you don't really know what to do next because everyone flies by. And because they fly by so fast, you don't even know what happened because you never had to study. You never had to try to take your books home and figure out what's the answer because you already do the answers, because you could just look at the patterns of how the question was structured and the answer of what was probably the best answer and just kind of figure it out up until you couldn't. That's what being a gifted kid is. It's simplistic. There's a little bit of nuance in there, but I mean, that's pretty much what it is. And growing up, that was definitely me. I don't know what it was, man. I just had a natural intuitiveness. It's like, I just know the answer. I just know things, and I don't know how I know it, but I just know it, and don't question me because I know. And, for little things like that, I mean, grade school, high school stuff, I mean, yeah, that's fine. I mean, it's really not that important to know those things anyway, so, I mean, whatever. And I think that growing up, when I did eventually hit that wall where I no longer could rely upon my natural reasoning to kinda understand the world around me, I did see other people sort of fly by. I did see them, really just kind of move up in the world. And there I was kind of stuck at the same level repetitively because I was wondering, well, what happened? Because I thought I was just always going to know the answers or something. And then one day the tests started getting harder. Everything started getting harder. It's just like, well, I don't have the capability to just know this. So I have to study. I've never had to do that before. And like maybe this is trivial to people who are not this way. Maybe you're just watching this video because the title sound interesting or something, but a lot of people when they're smart growing up, they really go through this. See, when I was 12 years old, I started a business where I was selling skateboards that I was making in my basement. And then by the time I was 13, I was coding up HTML and CSS websites to then sell these things online. And this was, 16, almost 17 years ago when I was doing this. And that, I mean, that's pretty crazy at that age, especially at that time. And so I always had this natural sense of I'm just going to follow my path. I'm just going to do whatever I want to do, and whatever else other people want me to do, just, get fucked. And, that worked for a while. I went to a different high school where I only went to school 1 day a week on Wednesdays. And I basically bypassed high school just to go to this alternative learning center where the kids that aren't so smart go. But I sort of went there because in many ways I was too smart to go to high school. So I just went there. And all this while, I think I really started to kind of realize that, there's a difference between being naturally intuitive aware and this sort of smart kid, smart book, sort of I get A's and B's in high school and okay, I'm super cool and I'm on the football team type whatever. And so growing up, I didn't really know what to do with that information. I'm just going to be completely honest with you. I thought that everything was just going to get easier and easier and easier over time. because there was this differentiating factor that differentiated me versus others. And really, it was just like I just kind of naturally became aware when I was a bit younger and like, okay, whatever. It's not even that cool because you get older and you no longer can rely upon that. And especially as you get more and more older, you really can't rely upon it. It's like, I'm going to put down my resume intuitive, conscious, I understand things. It's just like no one's going to hire you. And so that's the conundrum. And so you kind of get to a certain point, I think, and why I'm framing this for if you're a recovering gifted kid, that's why you're searching for these kind of videos. You're trying to understand, well, why was life so good for a while and then it just kind of became shit? And it became shit right around the time when everyone else, their life started to get good. And it was getting so good and they just stopped. And now I'm just like wondering why. Well, it's everything I just kind of brought up in this video. The thing that you have to understand about this is you have to go back to the origins of what made you have this natural awareness in the first place. And it's not to say that you need to compare yourself to other people who are on their path now who are rising up the levels in the matrix and getting their good old little job. You got to kind of find your own path again. You got to really do whatever it is that you want to do. And the cool thing is, you don't have to do all that stuff alone now. And there's now more paths, more role models, more things available to you than there was, let's say, when I was doing it. Like I said, when I was 13, 14 and coding HTML and CSS websites to sell stuff online, I didn't really have any good documentation about how to do any of that and start a business and taking photos of products and putting it online when you're a kid, 13, in a small town. Like people thought I was nuts and crazy. And it's like now, if you go to school, and if you're probably in high school and you're 12 or 13, you probably have a bunch of friends who already have Shopify stores or starting them, or everyone's talking about, top G, top G, top G, I want to make money, Bugatti. And so you're already sort of in this world where it's like, oh, I can be somebody. I can go an alternate path. And so if you're a gifted kid or a recovering one, maybe even in your 20s, you have to recognize that there are now more tools available to you, than ever. And it's like, oh man, I can really do something. And before there wasn't really that, maybe when we were growing up, but now there is. And there's AI that's now just kind of breaching and starting to actually produce useful tools now. I mean, before it was, we just got ChatGPT. That's cool, but now we got image processing, video stuff. This audio that's being fed through here sounds like shit when it comes out, but you just apply some AI to it and it makes it all nice and studio sounding. I mean, there's so many ways that you can just create and show people your inner world that is so rich and intuitive and useful. And it's now we're kind of in an economy where that actually makes sense to do. Like you can do that, make money from it, probably. I don't know how to do that yet because I don't have a brand to sell. We're not selling anything right now, right? But there is a way to take all that within you and put it out there and display it and have other people see your mind in a way. And that's really cool because we didn't have that before. And so as a gifted kid, you have to recognize that all you actually ever wanted to do, if you, I'm kind of putting a little bit projection on there, but realistically, all that you've ever wanted is for people to understand you. That's it. All the like extra fun stuff didn't matter. You just want people to understand you. You want all the knowledge that's transferred in your mind that you so effortlessly see and can realize and like make together into a world. You want that to be displayable for others to then see, give recognition to, and be like, hey, there's like something useful in there that I then use to build my world. Like we're all kind of in this world building thing right now, especially more than ever. And we have all this talk about how the timelines are splitting. The timelines are splitting. There's gonna be the light and the dark and this great period in between. We're all gonna like have to pick a side. And to be honest with you, the timelines have already split. The timeline split a long time ago. And if you're at all thinking about even these concepts and trying to decide what side it should be on, I think you already are on the right side because you're at least aware of it. Because right now we're in this really strange period of time where It's like you will talk to someone who's super aware, like super psycho aware, just like totally gets it, and you'll just talk to like an absolute robot. And if you're even questioning these things at all, you're obviously not a robot, so you're by default at least, anchored towards the other side. And that's where we are right now. And there's immense opportunity to put yourself out there into the world to be like, hey, look, this is me. And, you like it or you don't. Either way, this is what I need to do to make myself feel whole and complete again. Because that's what all you were ever wanting when you were growing up, right? You just wanted people to understand you. You wanted to feel whole, complete. You wanted to feel like whatever you were doing was meaningful. That's why I didn't want to follow the path of everyone else and just pass this test, get an A, or I got an A plus plus, or I got an A minus, or a B minus, D. All these grading systems of how well I memorize something. That world is going away. You don't have to memorize anything anymore. Just ask ChatGPT. A year from now, ask it again. It'll get even better. 10 years from now, it's just like we can't even really imagine what these things are. And so part of this whole process of while we're simultaneously awakening, we also have to recognize that there's this great period of having to kind of decipher like what was the old you, what still exists as an older paradigm which hasn't yet been refurbished to be approximate for the new world that we're stepping into. Is there opportunities somewhere in making that migration? So much now that you can do just to like, I guess, help people understand the change. And maybe that's all we're really meant to do is we're just like assisting in the transition period to make sure that it goes smoothly and not, kind of crazy because in many ways it almost feels like it can go kind of crazy really quickly without our help. Like, you know what I mean? I mean, like take all the conscious people out of the world for like a couple years and then return back to and check it out. I mean, it's going to be wild, and you just one scroll on TikTok or on Instagram a lot of times. I mean, I'm starting to like really hate that app to be honest with you, but you just scroll through all these things, like you'll just see like the most degenerate stuff imaginable and it'll just absolutely drive you insane. And so left to their own devices, the world would kind of crumble without us. And so the world does desperately need us as much as, we need them to still kind of fulfill the services of the average day to day Joe or Jane, serving me my coffee and stocking shelves at the grocery store. We all need each other in some way. And, there's every single person is kind of their own representation and stage of where their life is at. And, we've all been through these stages in our life. And so it kind of just makes sense that those of us who are on the more fleeting edge, we'd obviously should probably help those who were are not because that was kind of like a previous version of ourselves. And again, it kind of gets me to think of this whole other topic too, where, the more you're able to really kind of respond to the world as if the world like sort of is a projection of you, it does help in a way because it kind of takes the you out of things. I think that when we're talking about things from the spiritual landscape, you sort of have to recognize that so much of what we think is a spiritual problem that we have as individuals, my individual self has this problem because it comes from this reason, and all these like artificial connections that we create to kind of like revive ourselves to think that we really are this big magical thing that also does kind of create problems too. So just kind of be mindful of that, I guess. So many of our spiritual problems, I think, will actually be solved by AI. Because when you think about it, you actually don't have too many spiritual problems in the first place. It really makes me think of this time when, when I was younger, I remember like, man, I'm like just on the precipice of unlocking my fullest, highest potential. And the only like problem I'm really facing is like not even a spiritual problem because I kind of like unlocked all the doors. My only problem is, like, I just need a consistent shelter and, like, good food to eat and like, a consistent sense of security that that's not just gonna be taken away. Like, I just need a place to live and food on a consistent schedule, and that would, like, solve my problem and just, like, a bit more money. And, it turned out I was right. It turned out I got all those things now and more, and all of my spiritual problems went away. And so it's almost, like, hilarious in a way how we can artificially and self create our own problems and kind of self diagnose things that we think are real within us, but it's actually attached to like some other, like even more meta thing that we're not even considering because we almost want to have an addiction to how we already are like another problem away from, truly ultimately saving our lives. And like, if we just get this one problem out of the way, then our life will be perfect now. And so, like, even how we search for our own problems is totally flawed. And I think when we're talking about AI, what if you talked to just like a chatbot every single day that just had all your information and had all your quirks, had all your problems, had all your stuff in there and just kind of constantly reminded you to, basically be better. Think blueprint, but for like your spiritual sense of self. It's like that's gonna happen 100%. And so this is another great example of how technology, I think, is really gonna kind of shape our world and really help us grow in a number of different ways. And it's gonna help us in ways that we sort of thought were like these futuristic dystopian ways of like, oh man, people are gonna put microchips in their brain. But like we're kind of getting to this place where you can almost come to a point in your detachment of reality where like even that idea isn't even that crazy. Like you understand what I'm saying here? Like humans are fine, humans are great. What we have access to through our consciousness is very unique. But fundamentally, our soul is something so eternal that nothing you do to a body would really actually affect it. Unless we're talking about the nano electronic robots that they got that can basically tap into the different various networks and entrap your soul in this grid in time, which I don't know how real those things are, but I am a conspiracy nut, so I do think about these things. But ultimately, what I'm saying here is even if we get into the realm of brain interfaces and all these things as well, I only really think it's just going to help people. And so it's just kind of crazy how the more you're able to just look at life for how it is, so much of the things just kind of go away of what you thought, were like super important to you. You just are in many ways getting to just to that point within yourself where you can allow the fading away of what you thought the world was is the ultimate problem solver. And from that point, once you're able to do that, well, then you can kind of just do a bunch of fun stuff because that's all about what you want to create, what you want to design for yourself and design for others. And kind of looping back to what I was saying earlier, if you're a person who wants to create and develop and design and kind of display your mind out there for other people to see, we're now in a better time than ever to do that. I mean, this is like the literally the best time to do this stuff. And I think it's only going to get more and more fruitful because technology and videos and all these interactive experiences are going to get more and more real and lifelike. And sure, we can put some type of crazy dystopian narrative on that, but ultimately, it is a function of our consciousness to create more and more self replicatable things that are like reality. But the problem is, I guess, when we think about it, is that all these technologies, if we look at it from a higher spiritual perspective, all these technologies are really referencing off of the ideas of what we should technically be able to do at our fully awakened state. Like things like, for instance, viewing objects in your mind and then tweaking that object and rotating around and dissecting it and trying to kind of peek around what's inside it or below it or above it. Like you can learn to do that already within your mind. That's what I do all the time. You can learn to turn your mind into a type of infinite canvas where you vectorize into your thoughts as shapes. I mean, when you're programming, if you're a programmer, you definitely have learned at least some portion of this within yourself. I mean, you have to know this is happening in there. And so that's just something that you can do with your consciousness. But with these new technologies, we're just going to take that, put it into a computer screen, and then you just do it in a more tangible way.